I never thought I would be the guy telling a story like this. You hear about people getting cheated on. You see the viral stories on Reddit or YouTube, but you never think it'll happen to you. And yet, here I am. My name is Jake, and I was married to Emily for 5 years. We met in college, dated for a few years, and then tied the knot in what I thought was the start of our perfect life. Emily was beautiful, smart, and full of energy. She worked as a real estate agent, and I was a freelance graphic designer working from home. Everything seemed fine, until it wasn't. It started small, almost unnoticeable. Emily had always been busy with work, constantly driving across town to show houses, meet with clients, or attend networking events. But over time, I started noticing something strange. She was taking Ubers way more than usual. At first, it made sense. Parking in the city was a nightmare, and sometimes it was just easier for her to call a ride. But then it got weird. She would take an Uber to the gym, even though it was just a 10-minute walk from our apartment. She would take an Uber to get groceries, even though she had her own car sitting in our garage. She would get dropped off a few blocks away from our apartment instead of right outside our door. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe she just wanted some time to herself, or maybe she was trying to get extra steps in for her fitness tracker. But then, one night, something happened that made my gut tell me otherwise. One evening, while I was making dinner, Emily walked in looking way too happy for someone who just spent the whole day working. Her hair was slightly messy, her cheeks were flushed, and there was something about her smile that just felt off. "Hey, babe," she said, kissing my cheek as she walked past me. "Work was crazy today." I stirred the pasta sauce, watching her from the corner of my eye. "Busy showing houses?" "Yeah," she said quickly, slipping off her heels. "Had a few long appointments, then grabbed dinner with some coworkers." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. I casually reached for my phone while she walked into the bedroom and checked her location history. We had a location-sharing app on our phones, not because we didn't trust each other, but because it was just convenient when making plans. My stomach dropped when I saw where she had been. She hadn't been at any restaurant. She hadn't even been near her office. Instead, her location had been parked in the same spot for over an hour in a completely different part of the city. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she had a legitimate reason for being there. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. And that's when I decided to check our Uber account. I sat down on the couch and opened the app. We shared a single account for convenience, but I had never actually looked at her ride history before. My hands felt cold as I scrolled through the recent trips. And that's when I saw it. She had taken the same Uber multiple times in the past few weeks. Not different rides, the same driver. His name was Ryan. At first, I tried to reason with myself. Maybe he was just a regular driver in the area. Maybe she got used to his service. But then, I noticed something even worse. Some of the rides didn't make sense. There was one from last week. She was picked up from her work meeting at 9:30 p.m., but was dropped off at the same location an hour later. Why would she need to be dropped off at work again if she had just left? Another ride showed her being dropped off at an unknown residential address, an address that definitely wasn't ours. And the worst part? She never mentioned any of these trips to me. I felt sick. My mind was racing. Was this just some weird coincidence? Or was my wife actually seeing someone behind my back? I needed answers. So, the next night, when Emily said she was working late, I did something I had never done before. I booked an Uber ride with Ryan myself. The next evening, Emily kissed me goodbye, grabbed her purse, and told me she'd be home late. "Don't wait up," she said with a little smile, like nothing was wrong. I forced myself to smile back, acting like I believed her. But the moment she walked out the door, I opened my phone and booked an Uber. I made sure to request Ryan. My heart was pounding as I waited for the confirmation. Would he even pick me up? Or would he recognize my name and decline? A few minutes later, a black sedan pulled up in front of my building. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The moment I got in, I felt my stomach tighten. Ryan was exactly what I imagined. Mid-30s, shaved head, the kind of guy who looked like he had just rolled out of bed and didn't care. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror and gave me a quick nod. "Where to, man?" I had picked a random location, somewhere just far enough to make the ride last a while. I needed time to talk to him, to see if he would slip up. We drove in silence for the first few minutes. I pretended to scroll through my phone, trying to keep my breathing steady. Then, as casually as I could, I asked, "So, do you drive for Uber full-time?" Ryan chuckled. "Yeah, man. Pays the bills. Plus, you get to meet some interesting people." I clenched my fists. Yeah? Any regulars? He smirked. Oh yeah. Some people don't even treat this like a taxi. More like a personal chauffeur. I swallowed hard. My mind flashed to Emily's ride history, her multiple trips with Ryan, late at night, to random locations. I forced a laugh. I bet. My wife takes Ubers all the time for work. Ryan shrugged. Yeah, I get a lot of professionals. Realtors, businesswomen. They're always on the go. My blood turned cold. I knew. He knew. I had two choices. I could confront him right there in the car, demand to know the truth, or I could play it smart. I chose the second option. Leaning back in my seat, I acted relaxed. Ever had a passenger flirt with you? Ryan smirked again. Oh man, you'd be surprised. Some women love the thrill. Late night rides, a little privacy, things happen. I felt like I was going to be sick. He had no idea who I was. And that meant I had him right where I wanted. I glanced at my phone, checking Emily's location. She wasn't at work. She was in a residential neighborhood on the other side of town, and I was about to find out exactly what she was doing there. I kept my face neutral, my fingers gripping my phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My mind was racing, but I had to stay calm. I needed more proof, and I wasn't going to blow my cover now. Ryan continued driving, humming along to the low music playing on the radio. He had no idea that the man sitting in his back seat was the husband of the woman he was messing around with. I glanced at Emily's location again. She had been parked at the same house for almost 20 minutes now. I memorized the address, took a screenshot, and silently exhaled. I had two options: confront Ryan right here, right now, or play it smart and catch Emily in the act myself. I chose the latter. As we neared my drop-off point, I played my final card. Man, you seem like a chill guy. I bet you get some wild rides. Ryan laughed. Yeah, some crazy stories for sure. I pretended to think for a second. Ever had a passenger, cross the line? He hesitated. What do you mean? I smirked, pretending like I was in on some secret. Come on, bro. Flirty passengers, late-night detours. Ryan glanced at me through the mirror, debating whether to say something. Then, he shrugged. Let's just say some rides aren't about the destination. That was it. The final confirmation. I forced a chuckle, acting like I was just another guy making conversation. But inside, I was fuming. When the car stopped, I got out, thanked him, and watched as he drove away. I wasn't going to waste any more time. I called for another Uber, this time to take me straight to Emily's location. The ride over felt like a blur. My heart was pounding, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario. Who was she with? How long had this been going on? How stupid did she think I was? 15 minutes later, I arrived. The house was small, tucked away in a quiet residential neighborhood. The street was dimly lit, but I didn't need bright lights to see Emily's figure standing on the porch. She wasn't alone. Ryan was there too. And that's when I saw it. She kissed him. It wasn't a friendly goodbye. It wasn't a casual peck. It was a slow, intimate, lingering kiss. I felt my stomach twist, my entire body going numb. She had no idea I was standing just a few houses down, watching her destroy our marriage in real time. I stood frozen a few houses down, watching as my wife kissed our Uber driver like she had no care in the world. My entire body went numb, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. This was it. Undeniable proof. Emily had been lying to me, sneaking around, using Ubers as her personal getaway car for God knows how long. And here she was, in plain sight, wrapped up in a man she barely knew. My hands clenched into fists. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times since the suspicion first crept into my mind. I thought I'd storm up, demand answers, maybe even throw a punch at Ryan's smug face. But standing there, seeing it happen with my own eyes, I felt something unexpected: clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some misunderstanding. She chose this. I pulled out my phone and did the only thing that made sense. I took pictures. A few quick snaps. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. If she tried to lie her way out of this, I'd shove the evidence in her face and watch her crumble under the weight of her own betrayal. Ryan finally pulled away from the kiss, smirking as he said something to her. She laughed, like she didn't have a husband waiting at home for her. Like she wasn't throwing away years of marriage for some cheap thrill with a guy who drove her around like a personal chauffeur. I forced myself to breathe, to stay in control. I wasn't going to make a scene. Not yet. Instead, I turned around, walked back to my car, and drove home in complete silence. Every minute felt like an eternity. The anger inside me was burning hot, but beneath it was something else, a cold, sinking realization that the woman I loved was gone. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking. I poured myself a drink, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at my phone. The photo stared back at me, concrete evidence of my wife's betrayal. An hour passed. Then two. Finally, I heard the door unlock. Emily walked in, dropping her purse by the door like nothing was wrong. She yawned, stretching like she was just getting home from work. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay calm. "How was your night?" She smiled, completely unaware of what was coming. "Ugh, exhausting. I just want to shower and crash." I nodded. "That's funny." Her brow furrowed. "What?" I reached for my phone, unlocked it, and turned the screen toward her. Her face went pale. She blinked, her mouth opening slightly, her mind scrambling for an excuse. But she had nothing. "Care to explain?" I asked, my voice sharp but controlled. Her hands started trembling. "Jake." Don't." I cut her off. "Just tell me how long you've been lying to me." She swallowed hard, tears already forming in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed, shaking my head. "That's the best you've got?" She opened her mouth again, but I wasn't interested in hearing more lies. "Pack your stuff," I said, standing up. "Get out." Her face crumbled. "Jake, please." I pointed to the door. "Out." I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't give her the dramatic argument she was probably expecting. Because I had already won. I had proof. I had my dignity. And now, I had my freedom. She stood there for a moment, probably hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. And just like that, my marriage was over. Emily stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if she couldn't process what was happening. I could see her scrambling for a way out, for the right words to make this all disappear. But there were no words that could fix this. "Jake, please," she finally whispered. "Can we talk?" I let out a bitter laugh. Talk? Now she wanted to talk? After months of sneaking around, after lying straight to my face night after night, after I watched her kiss another man? "There's nothing to talk about," I said flatly, crossing my arms. "I saw you, Emily. I saw everything. And I'm done." She took a shaky step toward me, her hands clasped together like she was praying for me to give her another chance. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "It meant everything to me. And you threw it away like it was nothing." Tears started welling in her eyes. "I don't even know why I did it," she said, her voice breaking. "I was stupid. I got caught up in something that didn't matter. But we matter, Jake. We've been together for so long. Please don't throw this away over a mistake." A mistake. That's what she called it. "You didn't trip and fall into his car, Emily," I snapped. "You didn't accidentally take the same Uber for weeks. You didn't accidentally meet him at some random house, kiss him, and sneak back home like nothing happened." Her face crumbled. "I was lost," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't feel like myself anymore. I wasn't happy." My blood ran cold. "So your solution was to cheat?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Instead of talking to me? Instead of trying to fix what we had, you ran to some random Uber driver for excitement." "I wasn't thinking," she sobbed. "That's the problem," I said, shaking my head. "You weren't thinking about us. You weren't thinking about me." Silence filled the room. The air between us was thick, heavy, suffocating. She finally realized that this wasn't a fight she could win. She sniffled, wiping at her cheeks. "You really want me to go?" I nodded. "I really do." She swallowed hard, her hands shaking as she turned toward the bedroom. "Can I at least stay until the morning?" I let out a hollow laugh. "After what you did?" "No. Pack a bag and go." She flinched, but didn't argue. I watched as she walked into our bedroom, the bedroom we had shared for 5 years, and started throwing things into a duffel bag. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, not letting her out of my sight. When she finally zipped up the bag, she turned to look at me one last time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't respond. Because sorry didn't fix this. She hesitated, then finally grabbed her bag and walked out the door. And just like that, she was gone. The second the door shut behind her, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The house was dead silent. No footsteps. No voice calling my name. Just me. For the first time in years, I was completely alone. And honestly, it felt good. The door clicked shut behind Emily, leaving behind a silence that felt both suffocating and liberating at the same time. I stood there, staring at the empty space where she had just been, trying to process the fact that my marriage was over. No screaming match. No dramatic chase down the street. Just a bag, a goodbye, and a door closing on 5 years of my life. I took a deep breath, ran a hand through my hair, and exhaled slowly. She's gone. For the first time in forever, the apartment didn't feel like home. It felt like a place where memories had been left behind, like an abandoned shell of something that once mattered. I walked into the bedroom, and that's when it hit me. Her scent was still in the air. The bed, the pillows, her side of the closet, everything still held traces of her. My stomach twisted, anger and sadness battling for dominance. I had kicked her out, but she was still here in ways I couldn't escape. I needed to erase her. I grabbed the sheets off the bed and shoved them into a trash bag. The pillows? Gone. Every little thing she had left behind, her hairbrush, her perfume, the stupid slippers she always wore around the house. I tossed them all into a box and shoved it into the back of the closet. I didn't want to see any of it. I paced the apartment, hands on my hips, trying to figure out what the hell to do next. Drink? Sleep? Call someone? None of it felt right. My mind was too wired. My heart was still pounding. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A text. From her. Emily. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me. I stared at it for a long time, my jaw tightening. She had some nerve. After everything she did, she still wanted reassurance that I wouldn't hate her? I locked my phone and threw it onto the couch. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I never would. Instead, I grabbed my car keys and walked out the door. The night air was crisp, and the city lights buzzed faintly in the distance. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. I needed space. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the streets blur together as my mind replayed everything that had happened over the past few hours. The lies. The sneaking around. The kiss. That damn kiss. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, forcing myself to breathe. I needed to let go of the rage. I needed to move on. Eventually, I ended up at a bar. A quiet one, not the kind where drunk couples were making out in the corner. Just a dimly lit dive bar, half empty, with an old jukebox playing some slow blues song. I slid onto a stool, nodded at the bartender, and ordered a whiskey. Neat. No frills, no distractions. Just something to burn away the lingering ache in my chest. As I took my first sip, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't peace. It wasn't closure. But it was a start. Because for the first time in a long time, I was drinking alone. And that was okay. The whiskey burned as it slid down my throat, grounding me in the moment. I stared at the glass, rolling it between my fingers, letting the quiet hum of the bar settle my racing thoughts. A part of me expected to feel worse. I had just ended my marriage, kicked my wife out, and exposed the ugliest truth of my life. But instead of breaking down, I felt something else. Relief. No more lies. No more suspicions. No more waking up in the middle of the night wondering if the person lying next to me was hiding something. It was over. Finally over. I glanced around the bar, my eyes landing on a few scattered patrons, an old man nursing a beer in the corner, a couple talking in hushed voices, a woman a few seats down flipping through her phone. No one cared about me. No one knew what had just happened in my life. And that was oddly comforting. The bartender, a guy who looked like he had seen too many broken men like me, refilled my glass without asking. Rough night? I let out a small, dry chuckle. Something like that. He didn't press, just nodded and moved to another customer. I appreciated that. I sat there for another hour, sipping my drink, letting my mind slow down. Emily hadn't texted again, which was good. I wasn't sure what I would have said if she did. Eventually, I paid my tab and stepped outside. The air was cool, crisp, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I took a deep breath without feeling like I was suffocating. I drove home, pulled into the parking lot, and just sat there for a moment. The apartment felt different now. Empty. Not in a bad way, but in a way that meant I could finally start reclaiming my space. When I walked inside, I didn't feel the weight of her anymore. The sheets were gone, the perfume scent had faded, and her absence was no longer a painful void. It was a clean slate. I grabbed my phone and deleted our shared Uber account. She could find her own way around now. Then, for the first time in months, I fell asleep without wondering where she was. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds. No alarm. No tension in my chest. Just silence. And this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like peace. I stretched, rubbed my eyes, and checked my phone. No messages from Emily. No last-minute pleas. No attempts to justify her betrayal. I wasn't sure if she had finally given up or if she was waiting for the right moment to try again, but I didn't care. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I got up, made myself breakfast, real breakfast, not just coffee and a protein bar, and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone like it was a normal day. It felt strange to have this kind of calm after the chaos of the last few weeks, but I wasn't about to question it. Then, I got an idea. For so long, my routine had revolved around my marriage. My schedule, my choices, everything had been built around Emily's life. Now, I needed to rediscover my own. I grabbed my laptop and started making a list. 1. Playing guitar. I hadn't touched mine in years. 2. Hiking. She always complained about bugs, so we never went. 3. Going to the gym. I had let myself go, focusing more on work and making time for her. 4. Spending time with friends. She never liked my friends much, so I stopped making the effort. I stared at the list, feeling a strange mix of excitement and regret. How had I let myself shrink so much in this relationship? I wasn't going to waste any more time. That afternoon, I dusted off my guitar and played for the first time in years. I was rusty, my fingers clumsy on the strings, but it felt good. The kind of good that made me realize just how much of myself I had lost. Later, I hit the gym, pushing my body harder than I had in a long time. Every rep, every drop of sweat felt like I was shedding the past, breaking free from the weight of everything Emily had put me through. I even texted an old friend, Matt, someone I hadn't seen in over a year. Me, hey man, long time. Want to grab a beer this weekend? Seconds later, my phone buzzed. Matt, holy SHD, Jake's alive? Hell yes, let's catch up, asterisk. I smirked. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something. I had spent so much time mourning the end of my marriage, but I wasn't just losing a wife. I was gaining myself back. And for the first time in forever, that felt like enough. The days that followed felt like a reset. I wasn't just existing anymore. I was living. I started waking up earlier, hitting the gym before work, cooking my own meals instead of ordering takeout. I even started redecorating the apartment, not in a drastic way, but enough to make it feel mine again. The bed? New sheets. The living room? A fresh setup. The closet? Cleared of anything she left behind. Emily had tried calling twice. I didn't answer. She texted once. Emily, I just want to talk. I deleted it without responding. It wasn't anger anymore. It was indifference. And that felt better than revenge ever could. That weekend, I met up with Matt for drinks. The second I walked into the bar, he let out a whistle. Damn, man. I thought you got abducted or something, he said, clapping me on the back. Where the hell have you been? I laughed, shaking my head. Lost in my own life, I guess. We grabbed a table, ordered drinks, and caught up. It felt good, better than I expected. We talked about work, sports, stupid things we used to do in college. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Emily. Then, Matt leaned in. Okay, so real talk. How are you doing? I took a sip of my beer, then shrugged. Better than I thought I'd be. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? I mean, your wife cheated on you with an Uber driver. That's gotta sting. I smirked. It did. But now, I just don't care anymore. And I meant it. The conversation moved on, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Later that night, as I walked back to my apartment, my phone buzzed with a notification. Uber, would you like to rate your last trip? I laughed to myself, shaking my head. Not a chance. I hit delete and kept walking, without looking back. The moment I hit delete on that Uber notification, something shifted inside me. It felt like I had just erased the last trace of Emily from my life. No more checking her messages. No more wondering where she was or who she was with. No more caring. I had won. The next morning, I woke up early, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. No heaviness in my chest. No regrets. Just a quiet sense of freedom. I brewed myself a cup of coffee, stepped onto my balcony, and just stood there for a moment, breathing in the crisp morning air. It was the first time in a long time that I felt at peace. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't drowning in questions about why she did what she did. I just didn't care anymore. That weekend, I booked a last-minute solo trip, something I had always wanted to do but never had the chance. A cabin up in the mountains, a few hours away. No schedule. No obligations. Just me. When I arrived, I sat by the fireplace, opened a book, and let myself exist. No distractions. No ghosts of my past. Just the sound of the wind outside and the warmth of the fire in front of me. I had spent so much time mourning my marriage, but now I realized something important. Emily didn't break me. She just set me free. And for the first time in forever, I wasn't just moving on, I was moving forward. My story didn't end with her. It was just beginning.